see all the detail. See all this stuff I've got up here? If I were to hand all this stuff out, you'd say, oh man, this is crazy. This guy just gave me a stack this big. But we'll have all that accessible, which includes those details on that. And we'll be able then to know the degree to which a community can handle 20, and then another 20, and then 30, and then 40, while at the same time we're testing out something that we don't know in this state. We don't know how many people in prison are moderate, high, or low risk. We don't know. We got some ideas, but we don't know because they've never been tested. We suspect, like a lot of states, the largest group is the moderate risk group, which is why they're in the middle anyway. But exactly what those numbers are, we're not sure yet. We have all the things in motion to be able to do that with the new Tiger risk need assessment instrument that's being developed, but it's not fully implemented. Pam?
So in the world of pre-post assessment, is the risk assessment a living document?
Yes.
So that you do it all along?
Yes, it needs to be done intermittently. There's something called the case logic model that lays out what's expected through the use of the risk assessment instrument development. There's this thing that just goes on, phase 1, phase 2. It's very detailed, not implemented at all yet, but it's intermittent. It's driven by some periodic reviews, plus should be driven by incidents. Positive incidents mean you've graduated, something good's happened, you got your job or whatever. And negative incidents that you've been non-compliant and you're busted back or whatever. Those will affect your risk. And importantly, it needs to be interactive with communities. It isn't the Department of Correction has it and it's ours. It said that people have to have access to it. Access of information is one of the most difficult things to overcome with state agencies. Rules, regulations, and then you got the lawyers. How many lawyers do we have here? Let me speak freely. The lawyers get involved, holy cow. It's tough. But we have to have this, and so what I take a tack on is I say, you know what? Under what conditions can we share this information? Don't tell me no, we can't share it. Tell me under what conditions we can. And the answer is, well, if we created a website and we had certain information didactic, well, let's do that. Let's not wait for a brand new management information system to be developed in the Department of Corrections. They've been working on that for what, 5 years, 6 years? Right? It's years away from being able. We can't wait for that. We've got to take temporary measures to be able to access information, including, to answer your question, what is the risk need assessment of this individual we're working with? I need to know everything you know. I need to know everything you know about her. High risk, high need, coming back from my community, 3 times out, back within 30 days. I don't want that to happen again. I want to know all about it. Right? This is some tough stuff to try to get worked out. So far, so good? When you do apply the evidence-based practices, you can improve recidivism by double digits. In the state of Michigan, we improved the success rate by 36%. We had 1 out of every 2 people failing on parole and returning to prison within 3 years. 1 out of every 2. And we reduced that to 1 out of every 3. A 36% improvement. We were spending $274 million a year on the people who failed. People say, we don't have any money. I said, well, you know, we got lots of money. We're spending $274 million on our failures. Maybe we should spend that money so they don't fail. State of Louisiana, oh, we don't have any money. It's a poor state. Yeah, well, you're spending $172 million a year housing people in local jails and paying sheriffs 3 hots and a cot. Thank God the sheriffs are there doing it. Otherwise, I don't know where these men would be. But that's $172 million. When you apply some of those resources to these evidence-based practices, you can reduce, and you are proven to reduce recidivism, but you have to do it with fidelity. On individual cases, with her and him and her, y'all, and then a community as a whole, the group that's coming back. We have to join forces organizationally, which is why we form coalitions and steering teams. There's room for all of God's children. And if we're exclusive, we will fail. We've got to figure that out. That's where metamorphosis, I think, comes in a big way. How do we build that capacity and make sure that people own this? That's where Lapri comes in a big way. So the proof is in the pudding. And I will guarantee you that if we implement this with fidelity, we will see a reduction in the prisoner recidivism rate. I absolutely guarantee you. There's a big if in there about fidelity, you may have noticed. So the model itself was developed from something called the Transition from Prison to Community Model, TPC, developed by the National Institute of Corrections about 2006. They published a handbook. It's still accessible. It contains a lot of the information I'm sharing with you here. And what it does is it breaks reentry down into some biteable chunks. I have a time check. 5 after 3. This is the TPC model. It's got 3 phases. It's got 7 key decision points. And the purpose of this model is to improve each of the decisions that are made so that the decisions are better and they're more reflective of the evidence we know about how to improve individual case plans and how to improve systems. So we break this big thing called reentry down into 3 pieces. These 3 phases come from Jeremy Travis, who wrote a book in 2005 called But They All Come Back, The Challenge of Prisoner Reentry in the United States. He talked about these types of phases, and we've adopted that. Jeremy Travis, by the way, is the new vice president of the Arnold Foundation. It gives away more money for criminal justice reform than anybody. So if you're going to write down a little note, just write a dollar sign down there and write Arnold next to it. We've got to figure out how to get them in the state. But Jeremy Travis is what many people consider kind of the grandfather, the godfather of modern prisoner reentry in the country. 3 phases. You're getting into prison, now you're getting ready to get out from day 1. You're in prison, get over it. You're hereby punished. Keep your eye on the prize. Let's get you out at your earliest possible time. How do we do that? You participate in programs and you're compliant. So the first set of decisions is, how do we assess them and classify them? Well, what is it about? When we're running a prison system, we want to make sure that the high-risk people are living together and not mixing up with the low-risk people. If we end up with our dormitory and we take our 5 low-risk people here and we move them in with this group of 7 high-risk people, what's going to happen? What happens to these folks? You mean that the lower-risk people don't bring the higher-risk people? No, well, you're absolutely right. I was in Montana, and in Montana they had problems with incarceration, and they had a spike in their recidivism rate. I was examining what they were doing, and I came across this fact that they took their highest risk security prison that had empty beds, and they started putting their low-risk people in those beds. And they scratched their head and said, we don't know why these people are coming back so much more frequently. And I said, do you think maybe it's because who they're hanging out with? The evidence-based practice? The criminogenic need for antisocial peers? I have a point there. Spike in recidivism. $100 million because of not understanding what? Implementation fidelity. They had a policy that said you don't mix the populations. They didn't follow the policy. So you got to implement with fidelity. I want to classify and I want to assess, and I want to know not just what risk level you are, but I want to know your needs, because I got a few choices of where I can send you. I want to send you a place where you're going to get the programming you need. Difficult to do. Departments of Corrections don't have the best programming, and those that have programming, when money gets tight, that's the first thing that goes, because if you're going to choose between security and classification and programming, what do you think will win out 100% of the time? Security and classification, got to keep things safe. I don't blame them for that. It's one of the reasons that we have such a high return rate. Those first sets of decisions, assessment, classification, and prison programming should be captured in a transition accountability plan. In the general literature here, that transition accountability plan, or a TAP in Louisiana, that is called the Reentry Accountability Plan, or the REAP. And I am suspicious there's a biblical overtone for that. The REAP, Reentry Plan. That reentry plan should communicate to the prisoner, to the people who work in the system, what's expected. If I do this, I get this. If I don't do this, I don't do this. And if I keep my nose clean and I am compliant and I attend my programming, I'm going to move through my security levels and I'm going to be released at the earliest time. That motivates me, and it's in writing, and you can hold it. I went to a prison in Michigan. I was the chief deputy director of the prison system in Michigan for years. And I went into a facility, and as I did, I asked all the staff